The night had already decided to break her before it ever decided to test her heart. Rain clung to the cracked sidewalks like regret, streetlights flickered as if even they were tired, and Emily Carter stood under a torn cafe awning wondering how kindness had become such a heavy burden in her life. She had only meant to help for 5 minutes. She had no idea that those 5 minutes would change everything. Before the story unfolds any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of compassion, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from tonight. Your presence here truly matters. Emily Carter was 32 years old, a single mother, and permanently exhausted in a way sleep could never fix. Her life revolved around alarm clocks, packed lunches, overdue bills, and her 6-year-old son Noah, whose laughter was the only luxury she allowed herself. The cafe where she worked nights barely paid enough to survive, but it was honest work, and honesty was something Emily still believed in even when life gave her every reason not to. She had learned to walk fast, speak gently, and expect nothing. Her husband had left when Noah was barely a year old, choosing freedom over responsibility, leaving behind silence and unpaid rent. Since then, Emily had carried the world on her back without complaint, even when the weight bent her spine and hollowed her eyes. That evening, she noticed him because he looked out of place. Daniel Whitmore sat stiffly at a small corner table, his expensive coat soaked, his posture tense, his face caught somewhere between embarrassment and disappointment. The woman across from him had already stood up, clearly frustrated, her heels sharp against the floor as she walked out without looking back. The blind date had gone badly, painfully so, and Daniel was left alone with a cold cup of coffee and the familiar ache of rejection. He wasn't used to people walking away from him in business, but in life, it happened more often than anyone knew. Power attracted interest, not affection. Success brought admiration, not warmth. Emily had no obligation to notice him, no reason to care. But kindness had always been her weakness. She saw how his shoulders slumped when he realized the date wasn't coming back, how he stared at the door a little too long, how loneliness clung to him more tightly than the rain. When her shift ended, she passed his table, and something in her paused. She offered him a quiet gesture of humanity, nothing dramatic, just a moment of understanding. She suggested he didn't walk alone in the storm, that the night felt colder than it looked. They stepped outside together, rain misting the air, the city humming softly around them. Emily walked him a few blocks, explaining that the buses were unreliable at this hour and that she knew the streets well. Daniel listened, surprised by how grounding her presence felt. She spoke about life without self-pity, about her son with gentle pride, about working hard even when no one noticed. She didn't ask him who he was or what he did. She didn't need to. To her, he was just another tired soul caught in the wrong moment. Daniel Whitmore was a CEO known for decisive leadership and billion-dollar deals, but none of that mattered in the quiet rain-soaked streets. What mattered was that someone was walking beside him without expecting anything in return. He hadn't felt that in years. His penthouse waited empty every night, filled with glass walls and silence. Boardrooms respected him, headlines praised him, but no one truly knew him. And this woman, with worn shoes and tired eyes, had unknowingly touched something fragile inside him. When they reached a bus stop glowing weakly under a flickering light, Emily stopped. She reminded him to keep warm, to not let one bad night define his worth. Then she turned away, already thinking about getting home to Noah, unaware that Daniel stood there watching her disappear into the rain, his chest tight with something dangerously close to hope. Life did not change overnight. Emily returned to her routines, to scraping by, to choosing groceries over new shoes, to counting coins in silence. Daniel returned to meetings, mergers, and a calendar packed with obligations that left no room to breathe. Yet something lingered between them, unspoken but alive. He couldn't forget the woman who had treated him like a human instead of a title. He found himself visiting that cafe again, sitting at the same table, hoping fate might be kind enough to cross their paths once more. When they met again weeks later, it felt accidental but necessary. Emily was startled, cautious, unsure why this man remembered her. Daniel was careful not to overwhelm her, not to reveal too much too soon. He admired her strength, her integrity, the way she loved her son with fierce devotion. He began to understand what real wealth looked like, and it wasn't reflected in stock prices or skyscrapers. Challenges didn't disappear. Emily struggled with trust, with fear of disappointment, with the scars left by abandonment. Daniel wrestled with guilt, with the fear that revealing his true life would scare her away or make her question his intentions. Their worlds were painfully different, and society had trained them to believe those differences were walls that could never be crossed. But kindness has a way of softening walls, and patience has a way of building bridges. Slowly, carefully, their lives began to intertwine. Daniel helped without rescuing, supported without controlling. Emily learned that accepting help didn't mean weakness, that love didn't always come with conditions. No's laughter-filled spaces Daniel never knew were empty, and Emily began to see a future that didn't feel like survival. When the truth finally came out, when Emily discovered who Daniel really was, it shook her. Not because of the money or status, but because she feared the simplicity of their bond would be lost. Yet Daniel stood firm, proving through actions that he was the same man she had walked through the rain with. Titles faded, and what remained was trust. Just before the ending, please comment below and tell us what this story made you feel. Your words might help someone else heal. In the end, love didn't arrive as a grand gesture or a dramatic rescue. It arrived quietly, through consistency, respect, and the courage to stay. Emily never stopped being strong, and Daniel never stopped being grateful. Two lonely souls met on a broken night, and by choosing kindness, they changed the course of each other's lives forever. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that compassion still matters in a tired world, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in hope, and stay with us for more stories that heal. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness becomes the beginning of a love story no one saw coming.